Welcome to Phil Wilson Chats with Celebrities. And here is your host, Phil Wilson.
Chart-topping singer-songwriter David Paton has toured with Sir Paul McCartney, Elton John and Kate Bush, and has had major success on his own as lead singer of Pilot with hits Magic, Just a Smile and the big UK number one, January, and has sold over 50 million albums with rock outfit The Alan Parsons Project. Recently, David Paton released his book Magic, The David Paton Story, and album Pilot, The Magic Collection. And David joins me now. How are you doing, David?
Very well, Phil. Nice to be with you on a sunny day.
Fabulous. Yes, it's great to see you. It's lovely to speak to you after all these years of listening to your music. And I'll tell you something, the first song which I ever heard from yourself was actually Just a Smile. And it was on an AMI cassette, would you believe? Which I got in a trio cassette set. So it was, it's lovely to speak to you after all this time.
50 years.
50 years later.
Wow.
It's fabulous. It's fabulous. Now, I've read that your musical career began quite early on when you were on holiday with the family and was inspired when you were quite young. Can you tell us more about that? It was to do with the guitar, I believe.
Yeah. And it was the start of the school year, my first appearance at secondary school, and I wasn't there for the first 2 weeks. So the last photograph and whatnot, I missed all that. But my parents wanted to go to Spain at that time, so off we went to Spain when I was 11 years old, and that's when I was introduced to the delights of the sound of a Spanish guitar, coming from, a young guy sitting on a windowsill while the bulls rushed by. At that time, they were running the bulls through the streets. So,
yes, for the festival.
For the festival, yes. And that was in San Sebastian. I had to take respite in a window of some sort.
Yes.
And next to me was the sound of this guitar. Once all the noise and commotion passed, I heard the guitar quite clearly, and I was mesmerised by it. And I just sat down on the pavement and listened to this young guy who must have been my age playing the guitar. And I made my mind up there and then, I want a Spanish guitar and I want to play it as well as that guy can.
So that generally was a big part of your start of your musical journey. How long did it take you to learn the guitar when you came back from Spain?
Well, I seem to have an obsessive character. When there's something that I really like or really want, I really throw myself into it. So it wasn't long before I was having the pleasure of being able to play tunes that I knew and recognised. And so it was fairly quickly, I progressed fairly quickly. Within maybe a month or so, I could knock a tune out. One of the hardest things of playing the guitar is going from one chord to the next and keeping it in time. So that's one hurdle to get over, and I seem to master that fairly quickly.
Yeah, I tried to learn the guitar at school, in the primary school, and I was always told off because I wasn't paying attention. And they always put in the teacher I was called Gowan Robinson, who eventually went into a band and released a single but didn't do very well. But he actually put all of the stickers on the chords.
I've seen that.
And it was like, and he was trying to make it easy by making up like a phrase going, Ida Benson, blah blah blah. So it was but no, I went to the drums instead, so I was quite happy there. Yes, I certainly can't get a tune on a guitar. No, I might be able to get into a bit of a Glenn Campbell twang. Ding, dang, 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 dang. Maybe it'll not make any sense, but I can make that noise maybe. That's entertainment, as I say. Now, who were your idols when you were growing up? Because I've heard about the Beatles. You were influenced by them a little
Yeah,
bit, were you?
yeah. I was there witnessing the birth of the Beatles, so to speak. Around about 63. I was at a vulnerable age then. I would have been 12 or 13 years old then.
Yes.
And I heard the Beatles on the radio with their own radio show every Saturday morning. And they were playing songs, not they're always their own compositions.
Yes.
And I was just fascinated by this sound that they created. It just seemed to be so different from anything else I'd heard. And with my obsessive, fanatical nature,
Yes.
I just threw myself into the Beatles 100%.
And they are they're still to this day, people, there's all of this music, all of these people who are growing up are discovering music, and also like your own music as well. I'll mention later on about where your music has been recently used, but it's wonderful how how music can has lasted so long, and all the music that you've written yourself has got such longevity.
That surprises me and thrills me when I get my grandson, he's coming up for 15 now, and he'll say to me, Dad, my friends would like to, Pops, sorry,
Pops.
My friends would love to meet you. I told them about you writing magic, and they would really love to meet you. And these guys, they're genuinely thrilled to say hello to me and hold the song on high regard. And, that's just a great thrill. And when I get people saying to me, I remember that song, I met my wife to that song,
Yes.
It's a great thrill to think that that's a big memory to them.
Yes. When you started out, was it easy to start writing music after you'd picked up the guitar?
No, I struggled with that. I did want to emulate the Beatles, but I found songwriting was out of my grasp. I wanted to play in a band. I was lucky enough to get in a band when I was 16. And we didn't compose. I don't think, even nowadays, when a band starts up in your local town, you don't want to hear them playing original stuff. You want to hear them playing covers. And that's and most of the bands I've played in, we played covers. So covers was what sustained us, and there wasn't any need to write songs until we got a deal with CBS, with one of my early bands. And I was this is only 2 years later, I was 18.
Yes.
And they were giving us songs via a publishing company. And, we never really liked the songs they were giving us. And they said, well, guys, the only way around this is for you to write your own songs. Well, it wasn't until I was 21 that I wrote one of my first songs. And you mentioned it earlier as we were chatting.
Yes.
Just to Smile. It was one of the first songs I wrote. And I really thought I've written a proper song. It sounds like
definitely. It's a beautiful song, and it starts off nice and quiet, and then it's ba 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 ba. Just to Smile. I mean, it's just such a inspirational song. When you hear it, it's like, oh, it's just magic. It is. It's lovely.
We recorded it in Abbey Road when we did our first album with Alan Parsons producing, and
yes.
We usually, when you go into the studio, you just get a good backing track. Maybe bass and drums and a bit of piano sounding good. Right, yeah. Let's move on to the next song. But with Just a Smile, I wanted to put a lot of guitar on it. There's 4 Rickenbacker guitars on there that I'd tracked, 4 times. And Alan said, let's just finish this song off completely so we can establish the sound of Pilot, see what you're going to sound like.
Yes.
And honestly, we listened to that song over and over again. Once he had mixed it, we just kept saying, play it again.
Yes. It's that guitar as well. You can hear all of how many guitars was that, did you say?
There's 4 Rickenbacker
guitars. It does really make an impact there. Now, I know you've been asked this question many times before, and I have watched a radio interview which you did quite a few years ago on Radio Borders. Am I allowed to say that? So I thought I would ask you this question as well. Now, in the early days, people may not know that you were in the original lineup of the Bay City Rollers and toured with them for 3 years. Are you pleased you broke away to concentrate on your serious songwriting? Because I think at that time you were thinking, do I stick with the band here, or do I go and concentrate on my own projects, as it were?
Yeah, it was a bit of a difficult decision there because I knew they were destined for success, and they were just about to sign with a record company called Bell Records at that time. And, you know, I was given the opportunity to sign the contract and be a Bay City Rollers. And I decided then that I'd rather not be famous than be famous as a Bay City Roller. I've nothing against the band. I think they're good. They're all nice guys. And, it was just that style of music. I didn't want to go in that teeny bop direction. And I could see that's how Bell Records wanted to promote them. At that time, I was listening to bands like Genesis and Yes and King Crimson, you know, so
Excellent.
It was miles away from what the Bay City Rollers were doing. And in fact, Chris Squire from Yes was a big influence on me as a bass player. And so I just decided at that point, I'll just say no. And I did think it was a bad decision the following 6 months or so, where I went on to play in the Mecca circuit and one of the bands there, and the Bay City Rollers were having chart success with Keep On Dancing. So I did sort of think, have I made the right decision here or what? But, you know, I took a chance, and it was a big gamble. But, you know, we did manage to have success in the way that I wanted to have it.
So, and it wasn't, and you weren't like, it was like a manufactured band, but it wasn't, if you know what I mean, at the Bay City Rollers. And maybe that, you know, when you've got all these things, like, I mean, I know Noddy Holder and Slade, they lasted, you know, a hell of a long time, even into the 90s, with singles like Radio Wall of Sound and things that they had in the charts. But they didn't, you know, they had the glam rock bit, then they restyled themselves, as it were. But the Bay City Rollers, everything tended to be all like uniform. Everybody wears the same things, and you know what I mean? And it was a little bit, I don't know. I feel that as well, you know, when you see repeats on BBC Four on Top of the Pops and such, like, you can see that it's a little bit, you know, a bit in a box, as it were. You cannot see them developing any further than just, you know, that era, as it were. You know, and if I hark back to the Beatles, they had their songwriting to take them further and progress and evolve into something else. The music evolved with them. With the Rollers, they weren't really writing. They weren't classified as writers or players. So, you know, where else could it go? And eventually it just fizzled out. And when I see them on old reruns and whatnot, I think, I'm glad I wasn't there wearing these trousers. I know. Oh my goodness! I think a little bit too much tartan on the screen there.
Exactly.
It's excellent. Now, after being signed to EMI with a worldwide record deal, what was it like being in the studio recording your own songs after recording numerous demos with the Bay City Rollers before their breakthrough?
I didn't really record any demos with the Bay City Rollers. Didn't do any recording with them. A lot of rehearsals, a lot of gigs. We would gig 6 nights a week in these days. And, you know, that fanaticism for the Bay City Rollers was there long before they had any record success. It was there in Scotland. And if they'd travelled to London to do a performance, that same hysteria would have been there. I think, you know, Tam Paton, he knew how to manage a band. He knew how to create that hysteria. So from that point of view, he was a great manager for the Bay City Rollers. But for me to set foot in Abbey Road, which I always consider as the Beatles' workshop, that was just like a fairy tale. You know, I didn't believe what was happening when we went to EMI and they said, "We love your songs, we want to sign you." And I said to them, "Well, we were recording Abbey Road." "Absolutely." They said, I couldn't believe it, what they were telling us.
That's absolutely
So,
amazing.
Yeah, wonderful.
And of course, you had Alan Parsons was producing for you as well, which is a bonus.
Alan was an engineer at the time. There was EMI gave me a list of 10 engineers who were working at Abbey Road, and they wanted to take the next step up the ladder and start producing.
Yes.
Well, you know, Alan also produced people like Cockney Rebel and bands like that as well.
Yes.
That was all happening at the same time. He was making the next step. And I looked at the list of 10 producers and I recognised Alan Parsons because I was also a Pink Floyd fan, and I knew he had involvement with Dark Side of the Moon. It was a minor involvement as an engineer, but still his name was there.
Yeah.
And I knew he had done bits and pieces with McCartney, maybe the odd mix here and there. So he was the guy that I said, that's the guy we want. And we made the right decision there, because look what it led on to after working with Alan. There was a future with Alan Parsons.
There was indeed, yes, because eventually, which I'll mention later on about when Pilot at the time had finished in the 70s there, and you went into the Alan Parsons Project band. You had a lot of success with them, as I mentioned in the opening there, over 50 million worldwide album sales.
That's quite scary, really, isn't it? Mind you, that's over a period of 10 years. So I was with the Alan Parsons Project much longer than I was with Pilot, in actual fact.
And I've got one of your albums somewhere around here, one of the Alan Parsons Project albums. And you know what it is? I can't remember which one it is, but it's in there.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what it is. I thought that, you see, I had always played Pilot records. But then, all of a sudden, I just came about the Alan Parsons Project, and then I think one of the promotions people told me about the Alan Parsons Project, and then I was just in a store in a charity shop, and I bought the record, and I just thought, this is definitely worth $6.99, because this will be worth 10 times more than that, surely.
It's surprising that, Alan Parsons was having chart success with every album we put out in the USA. Yes. And we even had a #1 with a song called Eye in the Sky.
Yeah,
that was a huge song. Yeah, over here, you mentioned the name Alan Parsons and people just didn't know who you were talking about.
No. And I mean, if you look in the Guinness Book of Hit Singles, it's definitely there.
Right.
As I call it's the music Bible there, because whatever's in there is true.
Right.
That's the real deal in there. Now, going back to Pilot and your first single from the album of the same name in 1974 was Magic, and scored as high as number 11 in the UK charts and number 5 in the US charts. How did it feel, and how did you prepare for appearing on Top of the Pops?
Well, as I said earlier, it's like you're living a dream come true, and it is a dream for loads of musicians, for all musicians, to have success, to actually get there. It's still a bit unbelievable. It doesn't really sink in what's happening to you. You're just going along with the flow, and that's how I felt. That's what I was doing. I was going with the flow, and it just got better and better. And to listen to the radio and they say your songs in the charts, what a thrill that is to hear that, to know that all these people are listening to the radio, to appear on Top of the Pops and know that everybody that knew me in Edinburgh would be watching Top of the Pops. And just the fact that people liked the songs that I was writing, because it was all my songs that were released as singles.
Yeah.
So just to know that people enjoyed what I was writing as a songwriter, it's a great thrill, really good.
Can you remember where you were when that single got in the charts? When you heard it on the radio or heard the news?
We were on tour. We were sporting Sparks.
Right. Oh, wow.
And we were in a van travelling up the M1 or the M4 to our next gig in Manchester or Newcastle or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And we were all gathered around the radio listening to the chart positions, and that's where we heard it. And of course, we all gave a holler when they said, and at number 1, at number 11 this
11.
Yeah.
I bet it was I bet you had all of the emotions going at the same time. You were like, this is like, amazing, absolutely amazing. Going back to Top of the Pops, what was the atmosphere like there? And did you meet any of your idols there?
At Top of the Pops, well, I never met people to speak to them. A lot of them. Oh, I remember Ace. Do you remember the band Ace?
Yes, I do. Yes,
they were all big Pilot fans. In fact, one of them had a Pilot album with them that they wanted us to sign, and
wow,
they were next door to us in the dressing rooms. Adam Faith, of all people, was on one of the Top of the Pop that we did. That's somebody from way back in the early 60s.
Yes.
That's a thrill to see. And just to watch other people performing, like David Essex, and especially David Essex, he was huge at that time.
Yes.
And it was nice just to stand off stage, off camera, and you're right beside all these people. It's lovely, and they just say, hello, how you doing, blah, 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 That's nice.
And what was the best time that you had on Top of the Pops? What was your most memorable moment?
Watching Pan People, probably.
Excellent. Hey, Flick Colby and all that.
Yeah,
fabulous.
Well, there was another single that did a lot better than Magic. I think that there was the best time at Top of the Pops.
Exactly, that's right. Of course, when they had I think Gilbert O'Sullivan, he did Get Down, and they had all of the ladies on there and with the dog saying Get Down. It was like, what? But it was nice to look at.
Titillation.
Nothing wrong with a bit of that, David. Now, January was the next single to reach the heights of the charts, this time reaching number 1 for 3 weeks in the UK charts and spent 8 weeks at number 1 in Australia. What was it like having your first number 1, and how did you celebrate?
I was staying with my sister who lived in London. I still lived in Edinburgh at the time, but we were recording our second album in Oxford Circus.
Right.
In George Martin's studio, in fact. And I was driving in from my sister's flat to the studio. I had a Mini. It was hired. Didn't have a radio in it. So I didn't know that January was number 1. It wasn't until I got to the studio and I walked into reception. Everyone was gathered in reception having a glass of champagne. And Alan Parsons walked over to me with his hand out and said, congratulations, you're number 1. So that's the way I found out about it. And I remember, doing that Top of the Pops, and the audience are there, and between takes, they'll talk to you, and a girl said to me, how do you feel? You're number 1. How do you feel about it? And I said to her, I'm living a dream just now. I haven't really stepped down. I'm still high. Yes. On all of this, and that went on for a couple of years.
And it looked great fun as well on there. I think the video that I saw was January, and it had different colours in the set. I think, was it red and green?
I don't know.
Is that serving me right? But it looked like you were having a great time in any case. And that song is absolutely amazing. But we're going to talk about that again in a moment from now, because I'm going to ask you a question here, which you'll not be expecting. The B-side of January, Never Give Up. Was this a personal story about being in the music business?
No, it was just an attitude that I had of, if you're going to try at something, give it your all. Don't do it half-heartedly. Throw yourself into it completely. And it's funny you mention that song, because a few people have said that it inspired them to never give up. You know,
Yes.
when all was against them, they just knew that what they were doing was right and continued with it. And that's nice to know as well, that people can get motivation from a song like that.
Because every time I play January on the radio, then I'll say on my Vinyl Revival radio show in particular, I'll say, and have a guess what was on the B-side. Well, here it is, and I'll play it, and the feedback that you get, people just love it. They think it's another A side, you know.
Wow.
Because I think it's when you hear it, you think that's definitely a chart hit. That, you know what I mean?
And do you hear the vocal range in that? That's the very top of my.
It is very, yes. Never give up.
It's way up there.
Oh, you'll have really had to do some exercises on the good old vocal cords to get that high.
La 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 la.
Can you get as high as that now, David?
Pardon?
Can you get as high as that now when you're reading?
Oh, no way.
No.
No way. No, I have to take the songs down a little bit when...
Just a few octaves slower.
Just a bit lower. And sometimes there's a good trick just to get the audience to sing it for you.
I've been to some concerts, and some of the singers actually get the audience to sing nearly all of the songs.
All the songs, yeah.
which is nice and easy. At least it keeps the gives the audience value for money. They should really hand round a hat as well, you know. While they're singing. Hey, absolutely great. Now, Call Me Round and Just a Smile were the final top 40 singles to date for Pilot in the UK. There was a change in the musical landscape at the time with the arrival of glam rock in the 70s. Do you think that was what stopped the singles from getting to the previous high positions that Magic in January had?
Possibly. I don't know. I think we had a good following that would help, get the songs. These songs that you're talking about there, I think they got to number 31, which for us was still a success. I don't know how they categorize it nowadays, if it's top 40 or 50 or what. But
I think even if you get in the, I think even now, and even if you get in the top 100, it's classed as a chart position. It's still a respected chart position.
I think possibly it was a lack of focus from us and bad management.
The promotions, do you think?
Promotions, exactly. That was all lacking, and we were very aware of that. And we did diversify, and that's what takes you on to the Alan Parsons project and various other sessions, that I've mentioned in the book. I've found it an escape to get away from the bad management. The only way to get away was to leave Pilot or to disband the band and diversify and get into other things. We were lucky enough that a lot of people wanted to use us. They liked the bass player on Magic in January. Yes. They liked the guitar player on January, so we got a lot of work because of that.
And it sounds amazing as well. You've actually worked with, like I mentioned at the top there, Paul McCartney. What part did you play in Mull of Kintyre?
Well, we were recording an Alan Parsons album in Studio 3 in Abbey Road. And Paul was in Studio 2, and he just appeared in the studio. He just walked into our studio and he said, I believe we've got some Scottish lads here. Right. He says, I've written a song, it's kind of Scottish, I'd love your voices on it. Will you come along and join us in the studio? Imagine saying, nah.
Excellent. Yeah. And were you mentioned anywhere in the royalties?
Not in the royalties, but it is mentioned on some of the credits sometimes on McCartney's website and whatnot.
Oh, well, that's nice though. At least, but to be part of another number one, absolutely amazing.
Wonderful. Fantastic.
Christmas number one as well.
Number one.
That's right. Absolutely fantastic. Now, going back to writing of songs, Magic in January, is it true your wife had a hand in writing some of the lyrics by accident?
Yes, absolutely. She was. I had to get up very early one morning to help a friend who had a dairy, and I had to help with the milk deliveries. And I think it was the crack of dawn when I had to get up.
Yeah.
And I accidentally woke my wife up, and she said, "Oh, I've never been awake to see the day break." And that just stuck in my head, that line, that I kept hearing it. And shortly before that, I had written the chorus to Magic.
Right.
I used to have a piano in the main living room and a cassette recorder on the top, and I would just record maybe even 4 bars of a song.
Yes.
And that was Magic chorus, was 4 bars of a song. I thought I might be able to use that at some time in the future. And when she said, "I've never been awake to see the daybreak," I just thought that goes perfectly with that little Magic chorus I've got.
Yes, yes. And January as well, it's to do with, it's actually a girl's name, isn't it?
My wife was reading a book, and the main character in the book, her name was January, and she just happened to mention to me as I was walking to the studio. Right. I said, "What are you reading?" "Oh, it's a good book," she said. "And the girl's name's January. Isn't that unusual?" I thought, yeah, that is unusual. You know, I've heard the girls called May or June.
Yes.
You know, but I just thought January, that is unusual. And subconsciously, it must have just gone in my head. And when I sat down at the piano, that was the first thing I said, January. And away I went. That was it. I had the song.
Excellent. Have you got a favourite song that you've written?
Oh, always. A lot of people say it's always the last song I wrote. In this case, it's true. I've just written a song called Heartbeat. Right. I'm absolutely knocked out with it. I was out with a load of friends. I have lots of friends that we keep in touch with each other. And every 2 or 3 months, we go out together for a Chinese meal or what. And one of our friends, his studio is closing down. His studio is called Heartbeat. And he said, "Wouldn't it be great if we could write a song called Heartbeat and record it in the studio and do a video and whatnot?" And we all left after that evening. And that was in my head. So I wrote a song called Heartbeat. It doesn't mention a studio or anything.
No.
On the name. But there you are. It's the last song I wrote. It's called Heartbeat. And I'm really happy with it. And
is that going to be available soon?
It is. I've just registered it. It'll be available on Amazon, all downloadable places. It's on YouTube at the moment. David Paton, Heartbeat. That's all I've put up. And I'm really delighted.
It sounds excellent, that project that you've got coming up. We'll keep an eye out for that. Now, Pilot's music has been used in numerous film soundtracks, including Happy Gilmore, Herbie, Fully Loaded, and most recently in a TV commercial for weight loss, with Magic being used. What is it like having your music used in this way nearly 50 years on? Not 30 years on, 50 years on.
It's been going on since the 70s. Coca-Cola even used it at one point. Don't know if you're allowed to advertise, but
no, that's fine. Other brands are available.
There you go. Yeah, it's been used by lots of people, and as you say, the recent one is the weight loss, and that is massive, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was lucky enough to travel to Abbey Road to re-record Magic,
right,
with the weight loss company.
Yes.
And that'll probably be available next week or the week after. It'll be on social media all over the place. They're doing a huge new relaunch, a new campaign, and it features me singing "Oh Ho Ho."
Wow, excellent. Yeah, I had a look on YouTube at the current video, and it looks quite good. But I'd never heard of the brand, but I'm sure everyone will as soon as they hear your vocal.
Okay.
Fabulous. Now, you've worked with some of the greatest iconic performers over the decades, including Prince and Elton John. I read in your book you've had a surreal experience with Tina Turner and Elton John in 1995 when you were at the VH1 Awards. Can you tell us about that?
Well, what can I say? I was asked to go back to Elton in the mid-90s. I mean, I toured with him for 3 years, including Live Aid in the 80s.
Yes.
And then I left when Elton had a year off, and I started working with Rick Wakeman, of all people. And in the 90s, I was asked to go back to Elton and toured America and South America with him. And the VH1 Awards was one of the gigs that I did with him. I'd also worked with Chrissie Hynde.
Oh, right, yes.
On the Pretenders at I'll Stand By You.
Oh, I love that tune. Oh, wow.
She asked me to join the band. And unfortunately, I had just started working with someone else and I had to say no.
Right.
Well, she wasn't happy about it.
Oh.
And she had a bit of a tantrum in the studio because of it. But she was appearing at the VH1 Awards as well. Right. And Elton said to me, he says, I'm going down to see Chrissie Hynde. Do you want to come with me? I said, yeah, sure. I said, I've worked with Chrissie. I know her. I worked on I'll Stand By. He said, come on then, let's go and say hello. So we walked along to her dressing room. He knocked on the door, and the door opened, and this big guy with a dinner suit on opens the door. He said, yeah. And Elton said, I'd like to say hello to Chrissie. He says, hold on. And he closed the door. He came back 2 minutes later and said, Chrissie has a headache. And he shut the door on Elton. And Elton
unbelievable, really.
He looked at me with his hands in his face. But he was laughing. He thought it was really funny. And I thought, that is funny. It's good that he sees the funny side of it as well.
Yes. Unbelievable, isn't it? A headache. And Elton and David Paton's at the door. Unbelievable.
And I didn't work with Prince. I shared the stage with him. He walked by me as I was on the stage.
Yes. Well, you were a bit in awe of him, were you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I loved him as a musician, as a songwriter, as a personality. I just thought, he's a pop star. He's the definition of a Michael Jackson. He's way up there for me.
And who's the biggest star that you've ever worked with, would you say, over your career so far?
I'd probably say, George Michael and Elton John. Probably Elton because he's had such longevity in his career. I used to listen to Elton before even Pilot were formed. I was listening to Madman Across the Water and loving Elton John's music. So Elton John's the biggest guy that I've actually worked with on long term.
And do you think you would consider working with him again in the future?
If he's going to do any work, I'd be delighted if he asked me. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're watching, give David a call. He's available.
There you go.
Now you have, and it's coming across, of course, to the listeners and also people who are watching this video now as well. You have amazing positivity and optimism, which has always played a part in your path in life. What is your recipe for success in having such longevity for people who are wanting to start out in the business, which is quite hard at the moment?
I think enthusiasm and belief in yourself. I didn't get any encouragement when I wanted to become a success. I didn't ask for it. I didn't really need it. I just threw myself into my guitar. I sacrificed friendships and nights out with my pals and all that just because I wanted to play my guitar. If you listen to any successful person, I was listening to the tennis players talking about how fanatical they were over tennis when they were, younger.
Yes.
And I was the same way. I was just fanatical about my guitar. I loved the way it looked. I loved the smell of it. I loved every single, the sound of it. And, if I could take it to bed with me at night, I would do that. My wife wouldn't be happy. But when I bought my Rickenbacker 12-string, it sat at the bottom of the bed for a while.
That's right.
She said, put that guitar back in the studio.
That's right. Dying. When it drops on the floor, when you turn over in the night. Wow. Now, your single Magic is going to be celebrating its 50th anniversary soon. Are there any celebration plans?
Not really. No, we haven't planned anything. My wife might surprise me. I don't know. You know, there's only 2 members of Pilot that are here today.
Indeed,
the other 2
unfortunately
have gone. Yes. Stuart Tosh lives in Spain, and we did meet up just a couple of months ago, and he's in England at the moment, so he might pop up to Scotland to say hello to me, and we'll have an early celebration, I'm sure, when I see him.
Fabulous. So you're not going to be doing what Susie Quattro is doing, London Palladium, for her Can the Can #1. That's a great idea. She's putting a thing on at the London Palladium.
Wow, that's a good one.
Yes, I think it's in about, I think it's October, November time this year.
Well, I haven't done any Pilot gigs since the start of the pandemic.
Of course, yes.
I was planning to go to Japan. It was kind of set up. And then the pandemic hit, but I just felt after it was over, I thought, I feel a bit too old now for this. I know I'm 73. That's a good age, and I know Mick Jagger's still out there, and Paul McCartney, and
Rod Stewart.
But for me, I just think, I've done a lot of touring. I've probably been luckier than most because I started when I was 16 and I was still doing it right up to the age of 70 years old. So, I've had a good kick at the ball, as we say. I'm quite happy that I've done that. Touring doesn't have the same appeal as it used to have for me.
No. Well, Alan Clark, who I interviewed a couple of months back of the Hollies, he stepped back a bit as well, and he's concentrating on recording stuff in in his home studio, as it were, and releasing stuff like that. And he's recently worked with his old pal Graham Nash on an album. So I think it's great that yourself is continuing with the music and such like. And sometimes it is a case of, I'm happy with me lot, as it were.
That's what I think. I think I'm lucky that I managed to tour for so long and with various artists. I love the variety of the people that I've worked with. And the last person I worked with just before the pandemic was Albert Hammond.
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. Yes.
Free Electric Band, etc. And I was with him for about 3 years. And, after the pandemic, and after Brexit, It just seems so difficult to get things organised in Europe. Yes. I even had a German promoter come over here, and we discussed all the legalities, etc.
Yes,
about touring in Europe, and it just seemed like a mountain. And I thought, I've not got the energy for that, all that hassle now. I'd rather just. I really love being creative in my studio. Such a thrill when you write something from nothing, like an artist painting a picture from nothing. It's the same kind of thrill. And you listen to the finished article and you think, wow, 30 years ago, I could never have produced a song that sounds as good as the way production is nowadays, with all the advances we've had in music technology. It's fantastic.
Yes, with GarageBand and such like, there's a lot of people use that at the moment, and you can do all sorts with it. It's amazing. But I still love it when an artist is playing instruments, real instruments. Like yourself, you're still producing music, which is, instruments, and you haven't gone down the line of, using drum machines and things like that, which is absolutely fantastic and very refreshing.
It's there's nothing better than getting in a studio and playing 4 musicians or 5 musicians together. The spontaneity that comes from listening to what the other person's doing and modifying your part to suit everything else, and then they'll do the same until eventually you've got with Alan Parsons, we used to spend a whole day just doing one backing track, and and we would just perfect it. I almost got clinical.
Yes.
Perfect it so much by playing it over and over and over again, and interacting with each other and taking notes of what you doing there, what am I doing there, etc. There's nothing like having a band play together. I miss that.
Yes. And Abbey Road, you visited there recently. Did you record the whole album there?
I had already recorded. It was just magic that I did there. Right. I had already recorded the backing track here in Edinburgh, so it was just guitar overdubs and vocal overdubs, hand claps, things like that,
Because apparently it seems, I've heard from an artist called Kevin Devine. He used to be a television presenter on That's Life. He's just recently been recording it. He was recording at Battery Studios, but then he went to Abbey Road, and he was saying that it still got the magic. It still gives you the funny feeling when you walk in, when you walk in those doors, you're like, it's still got that something that's special. Did it have that when you went there to do magic?
Oh yes. I spent at least 10 years of my life working there with different artists, 2 albums with Pilot, about 6 albums with the Alan Parsons Project, Kate Bush, other people like that. And even when I went back there in the beginning of this year, I got the same feeling as I walked up the steps. And this time I went into Studio 3, which has been totally refurbished, right. But you're still in Abbey Road. Yes. And that's a great mastering studio. To have your song mastered in Studio 3 and just listen to what they can do nowadays. I thought that what I produced sounded really good, and until you give it to them, and then it's just blows your socks off. It's a knockout.
It's like the music is just coming right out the wall. It's like, wow, where did that come from? Excellent. That's definitely going to be a hit. Because that nearly blew me away through the wall.
That's it.
That's it. Excellent. Now we've talked about magic. Now what we're going to talk about is vinyl. Now the question is, what was the first record you bought, and which is your favorite?
Unfortunately, it was a Beatles record that I bought first, and it was called Ain't She Sweet. Right. And it was on the Polydor label,
right? And
I still have it to this day. I think it's worth a small amount of cash.
It's worth a lot of money.
It's in pristine condition, and so that would be the first record that I bought, and it was available in my newsagent that I walked over to. As I said, wow. I listened to them on a Saturday afternoon. I was surprised to walk into the newsagent and flick through some records, and there was one by the Beatles with Tony Sheridan. Right. Yeah, that was it. That was the first one. What was the second part of your question?
The second part was, which is your favourite record that you've ever bought? What's your go-to record if you had the turntable right next to you there? Which record would you put on the turntable right now?
I used to love Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yes, they're excellent.
And Peter Gabriel gets up there as well. But I remember listening to Earth, Wind and Fire. I think the album was called I Am.
Yes.
Every single track was a knockout, and I played it from beginning to end, and I played it again. So probably, that would be my Desert Island Disc.
Excellent. Well, I've always wanted it. Have you ever heard the Earth, Wind and Fire song Keep Tomorrow for Me, which was used in the Escape to Athena soundtrack?
No.
Well, that track, it has never ever been released, and I think if you heard it, you'd go, that's definitely got to get released. How we're going to get that released? Because I'm sure Lord Grade, he'll have the rights of that, because I'm sure it was one of his dad's productions that made that.
All right. great stuff, great albums, great productions. I'm not much of a dancer, but I used to dance to Earth, Wind and Fire.
Did you? Bit of September there.
Yeah, that's the one.
Excellent. Now, have you got any songs that you've got hidden in maybe the EMI vaults anywhere, or have we had a pilot? That you would release?
I think they've all been released in some form or other. There was a compilation brought out 4 separate albums with bonus tracks on it.
Right.
And the bonus tracks were tracks that were recorded but never released. So they're all out there.
They're all out there. And finally, would you be able to tell us about any future projects you have coming up that you could tell us about, and where you can get a hold of your music and your excellent book, Magic, the David Paton story, which is published by Sonic Bond Publishing, and also your album as well?
Yeah, you can get a hold of them on davidpaton.com or pilot-magic.com. And as for future projects, it's just writing. I still get inspired to write, and songs seem to come to me just mainly by somebody saying something to me. You've mentioned Magic, you mentioned January, and I've mentioned to you my latest song, Heartbeat. It was just because what somebody said. It just seems to stick in my head, and I can write a song around. Did you mind these little notebooks you got, and it said "Love Is" on the corner?
Yes.
I wrote a book. I wrote a song, "Love Is," and it was inspired by that.
So will you be writing? Will you be writing a song about speaking to Phil Wilson of Phil Wilson's Vine Revival and Phil Wilson in the Morning on Radio Shields?
There you go. You've inspired me.
There you go then. We'll watch out for that one, David. Excellent. Now, David, we love January, your #1 single. So would it be possible for you to introduce the single for me right now?
Well, here is the #1 smash hit from Pilot, 1974. And this song is called January.
David Paton, thank you so much for joining me, and all the best with the book and the album Pilot, the Magic Collection.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you, Phil.
Fabulous. Take care. See you soon.
All the best.